Hello, everyone. Welcome to the T YouTube channel. Thanks for tuning in here today. Really excited for a conversation here today between Max Howell, the core contributor and CEO of PackageX, a core contributor of teaProtocol, and then Jessica here, the maintainer of pypandoc. So really excited for a thrilling conversation. And with that, I will sort of kick it over to you, Jessica. We'd love to hear a bit about your backgrounds and how you got open source and what you're focused on here today. And then we'll kind of get further into the conversation.
Cool. Thank you so much. Yeah, well, as I said, my name is Jessica Tegner. I'm the current only maintainer of pypandoc, a Python wrapper around the document conversion tool Pandoc. And I got started in open source really from a very young age. I started making game modifications and I relied on a lot of open source. So for me, open source has just always been ingrained into me. Like it's always been open source first. I kind of sometimes call myself an open source baby because I really just had it from the get-go. I never really considered that something was called proprietary until way later. Other than that, I study computer science and just work way too many hours a day on like 500 different side projects. So yeah, other than that, I travel around to conferences across the world and do many different talks there about a variety of topics, from open source leadership to diversity and inclusion to maintaining open source projects and some technical topics here and there.
Amazing. Thanks so much. I think we know a lot about yourself, Max, but I don't know if you had anything to add or anything you wanted to ask Jessica to get us started.
Yeah, well, I'll just introduce myself briefly. I'm Max Howell. I've been in open source for 20 plus years. Discovered it because I had a job I didn't like and went home and installed Linux to try and get myself into programming, and discovered open source and the communities and sort of fell in love with how it all works. Loved the attitude everyone had of like, let's just build the stuff we need and make the world a better place, which seemed to perpetuate it. And the way everyone was trying out different ideas just to see if they'd stick. And then the ones that stuck ended up becoming like foundational and base for everything that everyone ended up building over the last 20 years. Most famous for Homebrew, which I created in 2009, which obviously is a pretty huge project nowadays and continues to be. And recently founded teaProtocol a couple of years ago because, like Jessica, I love working on open source. It's all I want to do, and I just didn't find there to be any, major or workable way to work on open source in any, even a part-time capacity without, finding a dev job that is normal. So it just seemed bizarre to me that open source can run the world, but the people who maintain it are expected to do it for free or become independently wealthy some other way in order to work on it. So we're hoping to fix that with teaProtocol. Yeah, let's jump into the AMA. I think Jessica, you already said what got you into open source initially, and how did you find that process? Did you start dabbling and then find that you were just taking more and more of your time and it was what you wanted to do, or how did that come about?
Yeah, so very long time ago. I say very long, but compared to you, it's probably not that long. I got started by running a server network for a very popular game, Minecraft, here in Denmark, where I'm from. And this server network, we figured out that you could have plugins. And initially, I just thought, yeah, cool, you can have plugins. They do cool things. But then I looked into it and was like, hey, someone actually has to code these plugins. And then I figured out the entire server code, which was third party, was open source. And there I was like, oh my God, that's so cool that I can read the source code. I don't understand any of it, but it's cool. I want to make my own custom server plugins for my players to enjoy and have custom games coded within Minecraft. And well, I guess I need to learn how to code then. So I started with Java originally, which is what both the Minecraft at that time was written in, as well as the third-party server kind of infrastructure. And well, I relied on source code that other people had shared, both on GitHub at the time, but also on the forum for this third-party server infrastructure, and they shared a lot of code and examples and guides, and so it just came totally natural to me that that of course when I made something, I would want to share it with the world too, not just in a binary format on my server, but also on a GitHub or some other way. So the source code was freely available. That's really how I got started, and then a few years later, once me and my friend group kind of grew over running this at the time pretty big server network, I kind of got into desktop application development, and I tried doing that in Java. Didn't really work that well, so I switched over to Python, and that is pretty much have been my favorite language ever since, even though I've gotten a bunch of other languages like C++ and Rust under my belt, as well as Golang. But just figuring out that, hey, I can pick up another language and build other things with it, but it's still cool. And then that just kind of spiraled into me working on 500 projects now, and I go 2 years without releasing anything because I work a little bit on everything, but then every other year or something like that, I release 5 huge things because I've been working on them.
Yeah, I know that feeling, having an awful lot of projects and not knowing which ones you should be working on. But it's just generally just whatever works for you, and you hope the open source community will step in. How do you feel about Java nowadays?
I had to use it a little bit. It's gotten much better since I used it 15 years ago. Back then we were all the way back at Java 7, and now we're at Java 22, 21. It's gotten a lot better, but it's still very a lot of boilerplate. That's how I feel about Java, but I'm pretty sure everyone does.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I did an Android app back in the day, Android for TweetDeck, and that was my main experience with Java, and wasn't a big fan. Gotta say, don't miss it. But it's extremely popular still nowadays. There must be something to it that's making it that way. I haven't got much experience with Python, I have to say. I know it's very, very popular now, of course, especially because of AI. You dabbled with any of the AI?
Yeah, that's one of my many side projects. I just got done. I just got done making my first prototype for a fully local virtual assistant, similar to Jarvis from Iron Man or the Marvel Cinematic Universe, that can respond to audio commands and respond to voices, and it both has an online mode and an offline mode that then can call functions to retrieve real-time data or do other fun stuff, and all of that is written in Python, and I'm really proud of myself for that one. But yeah, that's the AI stuff I've been dabbling in.
Yeah, neat. I've been mostly just packaging up AI stuff and trying to use it. The Python packaging system is a little nuts and bolts, it seems to me. Everything's bolted on a little bit, which is a shame. I know that Charlie Marsh is trying to fix that. He's the guy who's making UV, and he made Rough, all these Rust programs that help with the Python ecosystem. So I'm hoping that some people are going to help with that.
I use Rough myself a lot, and it's good. The packaging system in Python definitely gotten much better in the last 5-7 years since I started, at least.
The only thing with package managers is they're often side projects for people, and they aren't designed extremely well from the start, which then is a problem later on. But it's typical these projects. Really is just
the few package managers I've either seen the code of or even got the honor to work on. They've just been very opinionated. Is typically what I see. Like the way they do things is very opinionated. So it's kind of impossible to please everyone all the time.
Yeah, well, I certainly understand that. I try to make things nowadays that, have some opinionated ways to work, but if you dive in, if you dig in a little bit, then it's easy to customize as much as is possible without compromising it overall. But it's very difficult to make things like that.
Yeah, it also takes a lot of time to, that's also why like most side projects I think don't really go anywhere, because like people really want to make the perfect like project or the perfect program, right? So you end up over engineering and you end up not delivering at all.
Yeah, perfectionism can be a big problem for sure, and it's always tempting with open source, I think, because there isn't some of the other constraints, like your project manager, like insisting that you do this week and things like that. I think the balance is pretty difficult.
Yeah, it's really a double-edged sword in that case, because yeah, you don't have deadlines or someone breathing down your neck, so you also kind of become lazy sometimes, saying, yeah, I'll work on it tomorrow, and then 2 weeks has passed and you haven't written a single line of code.
Yeah. I've spent months on some open source projects just trying to achieve perfection because it was possible, and then like finally when it was done, I was like, this wasn't really worth it overall. And but certainly you learn a lot doing that. That you just there's no other way to become the kind of developer you can become if you do open source. Like corporate work just doesn't give you the same skill set, doesn't give you the same experiences.
Yeah, because you kind of have to wear all the hats, especially if you don't have like a foundation or organization backing you. Have to like basically wear all hats, from maintainer to coder to designer to marketing to sales, maybe.
Yeah,
What
absolutely.
what's the famous quote? It's like the first half of the program takes 90% of the time, and the second half of the program takes 90% of the time. Something like that.
Yes. Yes, it's too true. Like, how many of us have started a side project and after 2 days, it's like, oh, I'm basically done, and then 3 years later.
Yeah, I've said that a lot. It's like I've said that a lot to some beta testers for different projects. I was like, oh, I should be ready for you guys to test something in like a week. A year later, they still haven't gotten the first beta build.
Yeah, I have some nightmares about some of these things I've said that I wake up from in a cold sweat.
Yeah, same.
So, what inspired the creation of some of your most popular open source projects like pypandoc?
Well, so pypandoc is probably my most popular project. It has around 3.2 million downloads every month, and it's in the top 1% of most downloaded packages on the package index, as well as being marked as a critical project by the Python Software Foundation. I actually took it over for someone else because I was originally an end user of pypandoc, and then I started in nice open source manner starting submitting issues, hoping other people would fix whatever I couldn't be bothered to at the time. And then after like 1.5 years, I submitted my first PR to it, and the maintainer liked it, and we started building up rapport on the repository originally. And what happened from there was like people started like coming in with issues as well, like from time to time, and it was like things I had already figured out or knew how to answer, so or I could point them in the right direction. So I kind of just automatically started doing that because it was a very like critical project that I used. So I hung around the GitHub repository a lot. And then kind of a year after that, I saw the maintainer become less and less active on issues and pull requests and stuff like that. So I emailed him one day and I was like, hey, if you don't want to work on pypandoc anymore, would you have anything against me taking it over? And he was like, no, it's all good. Let me just talk with the other main like person that's been helping out. And he was also totally okay with me taking over. So they like transferred the repository to me and the PyPI publish rights and all the CI and CD stuff to me like 3 years ago. and I've been the maintainer ever since. And it was only after, kind of like a year after I got like ownership of the repository and everything, that I figured out how popular it was, and it had all these downloads. And because I got an email from the PSF telling me, which was really crazy to wake up to one day.
Did that change how you felt about it? Give you some nerves, or were you just pleased?
Not other than I knew that if I accidentally fucked something up, then it would just like it would break a lot of places. And I saw that not long after, because I've removed some deprecated code that had been deprecated for over 1.5 years. And then I removed it, and of course I published a version, and I did it in the evening, as every good developer does. And then you immediately go to bed. And then you wake up the next day to your inbox being flooded with people's CI/CD stuff just failing everywhere, because many people what they typically use it for is either help in generating documentation, or the more common is they use it to convert their README to HTML and put it in the long description tag when you publish a package to PyPI. So I had a lot of emails and a lot of mentions that I woke up and was like, hey, and that like people were smart. They figured out that it was deprecated code, but like I had a lot of messages where I had been tagged.
Yeah, this is a common issue with open source. Really, is how long do you maintain things for that you want to deprecate for various reasons? What did you do? Did you put the code back, or did you just like tell them to upgrade?
I told them that they just had to change, like, it was one function name that had to be changed, and then things would work as they used to. So many of them was already resolved by the time I woke up, because I'm assuming a lot of them were American, or at least based in the Americas somewhere. But the few that hadn't been resolved, I just stepped in and told them, hey, you can upgrade here. Like you can just change this code and it'll work just fine, like it always has. That's really how I did it, because I'm not really a fan of like putting deprecated stuff back in. And I haven't gotten any complaints with that strategy of doing that.
Yeah, it's a difficult one. Like certainly, I've been heard to say that if you have some code that you want to remove and you don't really know if anyone uses it or not, just delete it and wait for the issues. And then
Yeah, exactly.
if there's way more than you expected, then maybe you should put it back. Otherwise, yeah, just see how it goes. But maintaining deprecated code is dangerous. Like Log4j, the exploit 2 years ago was because of code that they wanted to remove. They hadn't removed because they felt this obligation towards backwards compatibility, and it turned out there was a massive security exploit there. It's just the nature of open source that you are torn between being this reliable piece of software where you don't have time to be that reliable, or you are the evil person who takes away features that people have become dependent on, apparently, and they're not usually kind. I find if you break their workflows, I hope that people were relatively kind with you, but
yeah, they were mostly confused. But when I told them that, hey, whenever you call this function, it's raised a deprecation warning for like 1.5 years, they were like, oh, they were like, oh, my bad. And I knew they could have been able to see it, because it wasn't a typical like logging. So you couldn't like import the logger and then silence it. It was like within the actual warning module in Python, which regardless of your logging settings, actually prints to the console. So, but again, it was because most of these workflows were run in the cloud and in the CI/CD workflow. So most people never really looked at it or saw it until it just broke.
I feel that the CI/CD providers are responsible to some extent with that, right? They should probably surface warnings in an unnoisy way. Right? If you're getting a warning every time you run CI for a week, maybe at the end of the week, it should email you and say, hey, by the way, you're getting a warning every time you run this. We haven't emailed you every time because that would be annoying and you disable these notifications, but maybe you should look into that.
Yeah, or like, I mean, now they've always really been able to filter these warnings. So maybe filter based on what stuff says deprecation, because I know, as an example, GitHub Actions is able to do this based on their own deprecation warnings. So it would be really nice if they could monitor the log output of the runs and be like, hey, by the way, we see that in this step of your CI/CD workflow, it just kind of dumped like a bunch of deprecation warnings. You might want to look into that so it doesn't break the next time.
Yeah, that would be nice. Something that rarely happens seemingly. So, how has funding for your open source work gone for you during your open source career? Have you managed to attract much funding at all?
Much funding, I would say it's been okay. Steady funding, not really. I've been lucky in the sense that last year I worked with GitHub I was one of the 20 projects selected for the first GitHub Accelerator program. Something that they just started again, but last year they basically took 20 projects and all the maintainers from that and had us go through a 10-week program, like very intense program, to try to discover new ways to sustainably, like financially sustainably do open source, as well as they also gave us a bunch of contacts to people within GitHub and like leaders in different area of the tech industry. And then they gave us a good sum of money to kind of like kickstart the scaling of a project. But it's mostly been like that, where someone or a foundation or an organization will like give me a grant, and then I do some work for them, and then they pay me. So it's never just for maintaining my project. I guess the GitHub was kind of because I was a maintainer of that, but again, I had to do extra work on top of that. I've never really gotten money from just maintaining my projects. I've always gotten money because people know me from my projects. I mean, that was also how you found me and reached out to me, and kind of through that way, I've kind of gotten funding, and but then again, it has incurred extra work for me. So, yeah.
Yeah, it's a standard story, really. You know, anyone who wants to try and do something as their job needs consistent income, and you know, typically you get it sporadically with sponsorship. I've had a few years where I've suddenly received larger donations or grants, but it was never something I could rely on. So yeah, it's a problem, and yeah, not unique, unfortunately, but yeah, indeed, teaProtocol does aim to fix that. That's one of the things.
Yeah, and hey, according to my teaProtocol page, according to pypandoc's page, I should be rich if I could withdraw the money from T into actual dollars. I would be rich.
Yeah, well, sadly, test token is not something that has any value, but indeed.
I think that's also why people have nothing against throwing it around so easily, because the test tokens doesn't have any value.
Indeed, like it's hard to know how this will translate exactly over, but you know, a big portion of what we do is the standard rewards for the impact of your open source. So that should be a reliable source of token for you. But yeah, like the goal is to provide token rewards to open source maintainers based on their impact, and you know, it's certainly possible that could end up with a lot of value for some, but it's not the goal. We're not trying to make anyone rich. You know, at the end of the day, yeah, we don't want you to stop working on your open source. So there's a balance. We've had to do quite careful analysis of the algorithm that distributes rewards to try and make it.
Yeah, so that's why you're not on T yourself, or like have any projects registered?
Oh, I do. I have the PackageX projects registered.
Oh, really?
But part of the problem with my registering open source is that we don't support the package managers that I've mostly been working with over the last 10 years. We had to choose, a limited subset for the initial launch. And despite the fact I kept saying to the product department that, this would mean that I didn't have anything substantial in T ourselves, it was the right call. But we will be rolling out like Cocoa Pods, which is where I have a lot of projects, over the next 12 months after mainnet's launched.
Cool.
So yeah, like what initially interested you in being part of the T-testnet?
Well, it was a code that you reached out to me and kind of showed me what it was. And I mean, also like you, of course, have a lot of credibility in the open source world. So when you say something is good, a lot of people will kind of like go with that because you have a lot of credibility. I also looked into it and I really like the concept of getting this like continuous revenue model, but that wasn't relying on a specific company to sponsor you or give you money or contract you to do extra work. And then like, I've always been fascinated with blockchain and with what it can do and how it can change industries. But I've never really gotten into the technical side. But I'm really interested in just the space, and I felt like those all those factors really fell nicely into place with T.
Yeah, great to hear. These are things that we want people to see and understand about what we're doing. It's blockchain scares some people for sure, and I can understand why. There's been a lot of scammy type projects over the 10 years or so that it's been around, but we're genuinely trying to do something that is fixing a real problem, and we believe our approach has a really good chance of success. So looking forward to rolling it out. Testnet is drawing to a close, and then we'll all be able to see how things perform. And so, with that in mind, like, what do you think of the T application so far during your use of it?
So, like, what do you mean more specifically in my use of it?
Have you enjoyed using it?
Yeah, it's been in the last month or so. It's been really nice. I've logged on from time to time just to keep track of my projects and like see my pool both as a like individual and on the project level. But again, it's still kind of abstract. I guess maybe it feels that way for a lot of people that are not actually the T protocol foundation, because we don't know what these numbers mean in like the real world, right? Like all of it is don't have any value yet. So, but like usability wise, it's been a pleasant experience. I look forward to see like what other features and improvements is going to happen on the UI side and UX side.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, well, great to hear. Well, test token is test token, but we'll find out later this year what these numbers really mean. And we got some really exciting things planned for the next 4 to 5 years. In fact, that's one of the coolest things about working on a blockchain project is that you get to make these much longer time scale plans. This thing is designed to run itself, and we have rewards pegged for 50 years. So if for some reason we decide to just stop working on it, the day after we release it, those rewards will continue to be circulated for 50 years. So it's a very autonomously designed system to reward open source developers and keep going, like governed by open source developers. Like the teaDAO, could function even if all of us decided to quit, because we would assign other people to manage it, right? And that's the goal. Is that within a few years, the people running the protocol will be key influencers and key people in the open source space, and we'll just pass it on. So yeah, great
Yeah,
to hear.
so yeah, so I had a bunch of questions, but also like relating to that and like to the governance model because it's a very interesting model you all have chosen, where like you started, but you kind of a longer term planning to like hand it over to the community in some way, shape, or form.
Yeah, it was always a goal. And I think it's one of the key parts about what we're building that really differentiates it from other attempts to fix the open source sustainability problem is that because it's all run using digital and smart contracts, it's possible to have it be run independently of any kind of corporate interests or corporate demands and be governed and run by the open source community. So yeah, over time we will be passing the directorship of the protocol over to the open source community so that it can serve them better. And I feel that is really a reason that it should be trusted. I understand that it will take time to build up that trust, but as soon as we go live with it, people will be able to look into how this thing is run and what is going on there and see that they can govern it, just like if it was its own open source project without any other kind of components.
Yeah, that is the beauty of distributed systems or blockchains is that no single person, in theory at least, has like full autonomy to just control everything.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So what else? What else could we touch on? So I see that if we go into like the testnet now, if we go to the projects, there is kind of proportionate to, I think it's either how much tea you have gotten towards your project or some other form of way. There's like voting rights for. Is that going to be for the like actual tea, like teaDAO, or is it going to be like what is that all about? Like how more like how, in what way is it going to be governed? Is it going to be based on some form of voting rights, or like how is it going? How does that work?
Yeah, so we're like both basically. Like one of the things we want to allow projects to do is use the T token and the protocol for governance and voting, so they can decide how those votes apply. They could make it so only open source maintainers or people who have worked on the project are allowed to vote or participate or propose governance proposals, or they can open it up to people who are staking against their project. Thus, saying, hey, if you want to say in how this project goes forwards, then you need to put your money where your mouth is and support the project. But that's optional because I know, like we all know, open source, every project's different. They have a different attitude to how governance should work. Some projects are run in a kind of dictatorship fashion. Other projects are run very much by like, hey, propose something, let's talk about it, let's see how it goes, and maybe I'll make a final decision, but I'd love to hear what you have to say, etc. So that will be a feature that we're adding on after mainnet. But also, yeah, like if you're an open source maintainer and you've proven that, then your token holdings will allow you to vote on proposals for the actual protocol itself, for the entire protocol. And, I think it's important that we restrict it in that manner because it shouldn't be other people who are just using the token for other kinds of speculation that are voting on how the protocol works, how it's going to be shaped going forwards. So if you're a maintainer with a project, the total T rank of your projects will impact the governance power you have in the protocol as a whole.
Cool. That I can't wait to see how that's actually going to hold out, especially if we get like some very high T rank projects like 60, 70 plus compared to a 30 or 40. I can't wait to see like the makeup of like how much percentage wise people have to vote, not so much in an individual project, but more on a whole like T protocol level. because yeah, I look forward to see how that'll all shake out. So
Yeah.
yeah, so in the new beta for the testnet that everyone has free access to, there's like now a secondary token alongside the T token. Do you want to talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, so we would like for stablecoins to be a part of the T protocol in the respect that it's more useful to a lot of people. You know exactly what the value of the stablecoin is. So we introduced teaDAO into the testnet because, well, basically it would be too difficult and expensive for us to use a real stablecoin. So it's really just a testnet token to allow people to experiment with stablecoins, and so we can test those features. Once we go live, it will be a standard stablecoin. I don't think I shouldn't say which one we've chosen at this time.
Yeah. No, that's all good. I was just curious because this, like in the testnet, this new stablecoin is still very new. So there's some places where the only thing you can stake, as an example, is T compared to if it's planned, of course, compared to the stable like teaDAO, the stable coin. Whereas is that like is it so people can kind of stake the stable coin to projects, or is it meant to like convert between T and stable coin? Like is this like how do you in theory on the mainnet get like money out of T? Because again, I think a
Yeah,
lot of people have this like abstract idea what it is, but because there's no like, oh, X amount of T is this much, or X amount of teaDAO is this much. I think a lot of people still have a very abstract idea of what is this actually the impact this is going to have once it goes live.
yeah. Well, that's typical testnet problem. Before we go to mainnet, like the value equivalent of T token is unknown. So it's just a testnet problem in that respect. The stablecoin additions, we hope that will encourage corporate interest more and things like that. We know that some people much prefer stablecoins to abstract crypto tokens. That we all know that crypto tokens go up and down quite a lot. And it makes it very difficult to do business in that respect. There's a lot of tax implications there, and for users too. So we won't expect anyone to convert T token to a stablecoin before they can use the T token. I imagine some people will choose to do that, but like once we go live, the T token will be able to be exchanged on major cryptocurrency exchanges. So that would be the main route that I see open source maintainers taking to make the most out of the token in that respect.
Yeah. So exchange. So for people that might not know much about it or still like is little unsure, does that mean you have to buy the T token on an exchange and then transfer it to your like T wallet on the actual T website, or can you is there going to be a possibility of buying T tokens from the T website itself?
So initially there won't be a way to buy T tokens from the T website itself, but I'm pretty sure that at some point we'll start exploring that. It's one of the problems with crypto is like how do you get these tokens and how do you get them where you need them to be? But we do have solutions for open source developers for when we go live. But everyone else will have to do the things you do, buying them on an exchange, transferring them as necessary. But most of the rest of the users we have queued up during testnet right now, they're very experienced crypto people. We're very popular in the crypto community right now, so we expect them to help us. And we're hoping that this system will appeal to like devs and people who just understand the value of open source, and so we'll have documentation out there to assist. We want to make it as easy as possible, but it's new technologies require learning new things. It's just the truth of it. There's only so much we can do.
Yes, of course. But yeah, I really think that's a key like point for its success to kind of get beyond the crypto space into just the general open source market. I could see a lot of like OSPOs, open source offices from different companies could be very interested in this. But again, it's also just like regular individuals that's interested in open source and giving back and stuff like that.
Yes, it's one of the things that I like about what we're doing is that we don't need these big corporations that should be helping sponsor open source more. Right? We're appealing to this entire other market who we've persuaded that this is a huge untapped market of value. And, our materials like sell that to them. The open source is intrinsically valuable, and yet nobody so far has figured out how to expose that value in a way that you can interact with. So yeah, I'm hoping that companies come on board, but I don't think we're going to need them, at least initially.
Yeah, you're right. But it's always nice to have. But yeah, as you said, the value of open source. I think what also, as you said earlier, lends extra credibility is the fact that there is this plan to like also have everything open source with T itself, both the protocol and the governance model and everything is like so as open source. I want to even say as open source as it can possibly get, in a sense.
Yeah.
Yes. I don't know if there's anything else you want to touch on, open source or T or anything really?
Well, I just appreciate you participating in both this recording and the T-Testnet. Like, we especially grateful to you, Jessica, because you were the first person to onboard to testnet, and like that. Just the fact that you were so enthusiastic about participating straight away, like, was just such a morale boost for all of us, because we've been building this thing for 2.5 years, 2 years at the time, and we just weren't 100% sure how it was going to be received. So it's just been great. All the open source maintainers that were onboarded and how enthusiastic they are.
Yeah, so I promised myself I wouldn't brag about it, but now you brought it up, so now I feel like I can. Yeah, that was definitely really amazing being the first one. Seeing I was at both the top and the bottom of the leaderboard.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, I was enthusiastic because I'd read about it and I knew who you were, and I got to talk to some people from your team. So yeah, I was definitely on board with that and wanted to just get started as soon as possible because I saw the value of it. I was like, I need to get in on this like right now. I was like, oh, it's only tested. I don't care. I need to get in on this right now. And yeah, I'm still waiting on that NFT. That first maintainer NFT.
I'll make sure. I'll make sure you get it.
I'm still saying I'm gonna print it out and hang it up on my wall. First open source maintainer on T.
Yes.
I'm looking forward to it.
It was great having you on, Jessica. I really appreciate you taking the time.
Of course. Again, it's very similar to like when we chatted a month or two ago. We did a separate interview like on my socials and on my website where we talked, and yeah, that was also like always really great, and it's always such a pleasure to chat with you all because you're working on some very interesting stuff that I have no idea about how it works, but I know it's going to impact me in a very big way when it launches.
Yeah, we'll make sure.
Well, thanks so much, Jessica. Really appreciate your time. It was a really great conversation, and it was really, really fun, really organic, and yeah, I really enjoyed listening in. Got some really good notes, and really looking forward to getting this out there for everyone to see. So we'll definitely share that with you as soon as we can. Thanks again to everyone that tuned in, and yeah, super excited for any following conversations. That's the two of you and on the T channel that we'll probably have. So yeah, thanks again. With that, we'll see you soon, everyone.
Bye.